The signal had no official name. In the vast galactic archives, it was simply known as Extinction Event Protocol, Omega, a terrifying relic from a forgotten age, older than most civilizations still breathing. No one knew who built it or how it worked. They only knew what happened when it activated. Stars would dim, entire systems would destabilize. Civilizations, no matter how advanced, would fall into a desperate panic. And somewhere in the cold, silent void, a pulse would echo, slow, rhythmic, and utterly unavoidable. A final call. Ambassador Relthon had witnessed this signal 3 times in his long career. Each time he watched as an entire species vanished within months. Not conquered, not enslaved, they were just gone. So when the warning lights flared to life once again inside the Galactic Council chamber, his frills tightened in pure dread. "Confirmed," the archivist announced, her voice a soft, grim whisper. "Omega Protocol has activated." The chamber immediately filled with terrified murmurs. "Which system this time?" a counselor asked, his voice shaking. The central hologram shifted, zooming in on a distant spiral arm of the galaxy, highlighting a small, vibrant system. Kelvar Prime, a young civilization, gentle, agricultural, barely spacefaring. Relthon felt a heavy weight settle in his core. "They won't survive," someone whispered from the back. "They never do." For millennia, the Council had accepted the protocol as a cosmic obituary. It was a notification of death, not a problem to be solved. But this time, something was different. "Additional data detected," the archivist said, a note of confusion creeping into her voice. "The signal. It's directional." The chamber fell silent. Every eye was fixed on the hologram. "Directional?" Relthon repeated, his voice barely audible. "To whom?" Coordinates flashed onto the display. A single, unremarkable blue star system. A primitive, chaotic, and incredibly loud world. Its name appeared in crisp lettering. SOL. Earth. Nervous laughter broke out, quickly growing louder, almost hysterical. "Earth?" scoffed a counselor. "That death world?" "They've barely unified their own planet," another added with disdain. "Their technology is crude, their politics are a constant mess." "They're not even a Tier 4 civilization," a third exclaimed. But Relthon stared at the display, a deep unease growing inside him. Why, he wondered aloud, would an extinction beacon call them? No one had an answer. Meanwhile, on Earth, Lieutenant Maya Serrano was halfway through her night shift when the sky itself seemed to scream. Every satellite in orbit lit up. Every sensor went completely haywire. Emergency channels that had been silent for years suddenly burst to life. She stood on the command deck of the orbital station, her dark hair pulled back, her eyes sharp and focused despite the exhaustion etched beneath them. "Unknown signal confirmed," an officer reported, his voice tight. "It's not hostile, but it's not random." Maya leaned forward, her gaze fixed on the cascading data. "Origin?" "Unknown, ma'am." "But the destination?" He swallowed hard. "It's us." A profound silence fell over the command deck. "Route it to Global Command," Maya said, her voice impossibly calm. "And wake everyone." The message wasn't in words. It wasn't any known language. It was pure, raw desperation. Images, feelings, and fears flooded human systems. Cities burning under a dying sun. Biospheres collapsing, the terrified faces of an unknown species staring into the void. A civilization was crying out as their world tore itself apart. Kelvar Prime was dying, and for some inexplicable reason the galaxy had asked humans to answer the call. The Galactic Council expected nothing At best, Earth would ignore the signal, too primitive to even understand it. At worst, they would panic, descending into chaos like so many before them. Instead, within hours, human ships launched, but they weren't warships. They were rescue vessels, medical transports, massive evacuation cruisers, even experimental terraforming platforms, still marked with prototype warnings, were powering up their engines. From the council chamber, Rel-Than watched in stunned silence as Earth mobilized with a speed and efficiency that was terrifying to behold. "They're mobilizing," the archivist whispered, her voice filled with awe. "For what purpose?" a counselor demanded, still incredulous. "They can't fight a planetary collapse. It's impossible." Rel-Than didn't speak. He was remembering something he had read deep within Earth's chaotic history archives. A defining trait of their species. Humans didn't just fight enemies made of flesh and steel. They fought fate itself. When Lieutenant Maya Serrano's ship, the Endeavor, dropped out of warp into Kelvar space, they were met with absolute chaos. The planet's core was destabilizing, triggering massive volcanic eruptions. Brutal atmospheric storms were ripping entire continents apart. The Kelvarians were evacuating blindly, their ships scattering into the void with no plan, no destination, and no hope. The Kelvarian leaders who met them begged the humans to leave. "You will die here with us," they pleaded, their voices trembling with despair. "This is not your war." Maya listened quietly, her expression compassionate. Then she spoke, her voice soft but firm, carrying across the comms channel. "Neither were hurricanes or earthquakes or pandemics. We fought those too." She turned to her crew, her eyes blazing with determination. "Begin extraction." The rest of the galaxy watched in utter disbelief. What the humans did next was considered impossible. They didn't save everyone, they couldn't, but they saved enough. Enough children to carry on the Kelvarian lineage. Enough knowledge to rebuild their culture. Enough lives to give Kelvar Prime a future. Human engineers using unproven technology managed to stabilize the planet's collapse just long enough to create safe evacuation corridors. Human medics, working around the clock, treated species whose biology they barely understood. And human pilots flew rescue missions until their ships physically failed, pushing past every red line and warning system. The losses were heavy. Humans died. But they stayed. They stayed until the very end. As the last Kelvarian refugee ship warped away to safety, the extinction signal, the dreaded Omega Protocol, faded into silence. For the first time in recorded galactic history, the signal ended without a species dying out. The Council was reeling. And in that moment, Rel-Than finally understood. He looked at the stunned faces around him. "This signal," he said slowly, the realization dawning on him. "It was never a warning." The archivist looked up from her console, her eyes wide. "Then what was it?" "A test," Rel-Than replied, his voice filled with a newfound respect. "Or a call for help." Later in the quiet aftermath, Maya Serrano stood on an observation deck watching the Kelvarian survivors begin to settle into temporary habitats built by human hands. A Kelvarian elder approached her, his body still trembling from the ordeal. "Why?" he asked, his voice raspy. "Why did the signal call you? Out of all the stars in the sky, why did it choose your world?" Maya thought for a long moment, a faint, tired smile touching her lips. It was a very human smile, quiet and kind. "Because when things are about to end," she said, Humans don't waste time asking who deserves to be saved. She met his eyes, her gaze unwavering. We just ask if there's still time. Within the week, the Galactic Council reclassified Earth. It was no longer listed as a death world. It was reclassified as something far more dangerous and far more vital. A hope world. And across the galaxy, on ancient slumbering systems, forgotten protocols began to quietly update themselves. From that day on, when extinction loomed, the signal would always point to Earth, because humanity had become the one thing the universe had never planned for. The species that refuses to let the ending be final. The galaxy had learned the truth far too late. Humans are not summoned to witness extinction. They are summoned to stop it. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more tales from across the cosmos. We'll see you in the next one.